Welcome to the second episode of the Black Eyed Podcast. I'm Billy. I'm here with Samuel and Dalia.
What's up?
Hi.
Here, Dalia, let's have you summarize what you remember we talked about in the last episode.
Don't put me on the spot like that.
I'm gonna put you on the spot. Everyone's getting put on the spot at
We
some
talked
point.
about the origin of Black history and going back, dating back on like slavery and whatnot, the important names that resemble Black history, a lot of stuff that's hidden behind it, and then also bringing in the topics, a little small topic like, how like stuff's not like the black and white situation.
The black and white situation.
That is
of
crazy.
The pictures from like the civil rights movement in
Yeah.
black and white.
Yeah. That's good. That's pretty good. Sam, what do you remember?
We talked about the lesser known and less taught aspects of Black history, the things that people kind of ignore in the education system in America,
Yeah.
and that the CIA killed a lot of people.
Bro, the CIA just loves murdering people. This podcast is a lot more murder than... Not more murder than I thought, but it comes up a lot more, you know?
I mean, it kind of just happened.
Yeah. Today's episode is talking about how all those things we in the first episode kind of lead into how, like, its effect on media now specifically. Because I feel like, there were black musicians coming up at the time. Jazz was getting really popular in the 20s. So there were popular jazz singers and players in the early 1900s leading up to when the civil rights movement was happening. So black people have been part of modern media since its inception, basically. But we're still holding on and fighting up until the 60s where we were talking about it. So the first thing I think we'll kind of talk about is like kind of a trend that happened in like the 50s, 60s, but also was kind of a trend leading up to the point. Because while black music was incredibly popular, people didn't want to see black singers and black players. People didn't want to have them in their clubs. So what happened is white people would go to black clubs, see the music they were playing, be like getting down with it, and then take it and just kind of do the exact same thing at white clubs. So that's where, we have Elvis is an example of that. I'm pretty sure he saw some black performers and like singers and dancers, and then just took on their mannerisms in the way that they danced and sang, and brought it to the radio stations and stuff, and became one of the most famous singers ever because he was like, damn, those black people spitting. The first thing we can kind of talk about is Frankie Lyman performing Little Bitty Pretty One on stage. And this is a video where it's a black singer getting down, being groovy, and he's given all the energy, he's singing, and the camera cuts to the fully white crowd of white women, and none of them are reacting. They all look uncomfortable and they all look upset. And it's because he hadn't performed live after he got really popular on the radio, and then he was just kind of but he didn't perform live in front of white people that much. So when he did, people didn't realize that he was not white. So when they saw him live, they just were no energy, giving him nothing. So this article is on The Root. It talks about kind of, the video itself. They refer to them as Jim Crow Karen.
Oh
No,
my
that is
God.
crazy.
The article is not really talking about any of it came from, but the article is just making fun of these white people, saying that they have no rhythm. This is why they have no rhythm. This one is a picture of one of the ladies in the audience saying, "This damn camera on me. I just want to bop to this jam so bad, but Jim Bob gonna kill me if he sees me on this camera." Or And then some people are pointing out that some of them are still alive today, and they have kids and grandkids, and they're voting for Donald Trump, which honestly is true. You know, a lot of people were like perfectly fine listening to black music and listening to black performers, and then being like, I don't know about them rights though. It seems like the Oppression's making some pretty good music. The Oppression, sorry. Yeah, and then one of the writers on this website said, wow, these Jim Crow Karens look super salty. The article at the beginning calls them saltians. Which, you know, I think it's, I was going to say it's perfectly acceptable to call white people crackers. High school project. High school project.
Now you have to cut that.
I'm not going to cut anything. So, to go off of that, so that was a very fun example of kind of how black people were being treated by audiences around the civil rights movement. And now we can kind of get into, well, that was a little bit before, and then afterwards, you know, a lot of black musicians were standing with the people. Some of them weren't, you know, some of them were trying to get their money, and some of them didn't care about their money as much. So then we get to the 70s and 80s, kind of, you know, hip hop and rock and roll is kind of not phased out, but is no longer the thing black people are doing. Black people like to innovate in music a lot. So rock and roll was kind of phasing out, and hip hop started becoming a little bit more prominent, and quickly people found that acting a little bit more tough, you know, acting like you're from the hood was very popular for some reason. And turns out white people like to live vicariously through black people a lot of the time. So becoming a little bit more hard, a little bit more hood as a persona, which it almost was entirely a persona for a lot of these people, became really popular in making money. And that was the case. You know, we had R&B artists. You know, we always have our Ushers and our Chris Browns.
Ooh, I don't know about Chris
About
Brown.
You know, we always have somebody who's a little bit softer. You know, there's Prince and Michael Jackson, who were kind of challenging a lot of the social norms and kind of rap stereotypes for the time, and kind of leading into, you know, when they died.
Michael Jackson was not very rap.
He wasn't, and that's kind of the point, because while rap music was getting more popular and becoming
innovating.
Yeah, and becoming more of like a, you know, portraying that black masculinity and showing like, we're hard and we sell drugs to make money because we need to work for what we have. There were some people still being outside of that and still trying to be a little bit cleaner. And, you know, Prince and Michael Jackson are some of the most popular artists and some of the most highest selling. So obviously they were doing something all right, but then we get into like, you know, Ice Cube was like a teenager in the 70s and started growing up into the 80s after he went to college, and that's kind of when Ice Cube started popping off a little bit with NWA in the late 80s, early 90s, kind of, a little bit sooner, and that was around the height of this like, what do people call it? And it sounds bad, like gangster rap. That's like the height of gangster rap was like 80s, early 90s, before it kind of started transitioning a little bit. Yeah, like, you know, we had Biggie and Tupac on the two coasts, you know, leading these movements, but it was a very specific image with like some of these artists, and you know, I think Tupac specifically was a little bit of he was a little bit zesty, I'm not gonna lie. I've seen the pictures. That man wore a lot of leather. Have you seen how much leather?
No, he did
Tupac
wear a
was?
lot. It's almost like out of the timeline how much leather he wore.
He was a little bit zesty, I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, you know, we take the struggles that people have been living under for at that point, around the 80s, around 100 years, or, well, 100 years free. And then, you know, that struggle that you're living under, going through the 60s and, you know, living through things called Bloody Sunday, which, crazy ass name. And living through things like that and then coming out of it and being like, I'm going to put on a persona to protect myself. Oh, this persona I created is incredibly good at making money. Anything you guys want to add?
I mean, no, you pretty much summed that up.
Yeah. Delia?
No.
Alright. Yeah, and then when you have things develop and become established, there's always going to be people who want to break that. So, you know, there were already people, again, like Prince was one of the main ones. Our R&B artists, kind of not being so much like, I work hard for the paint, and being like, and like, you know, being symbols of like, baby. You know, we have
Like romance.
yeah,
symbols.
like romantic romance symbols and stuff like that. But you know, we go up from the 80s and kind of go into the 90s when Biggie and Tupac were popping off, and then you have people like Will Smith. He's the parents just don't understand guy. You know, he was
A Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
yeah, he was the clean guy. He didn't cuss in his songs. You know, he was a little bit he was squeaky clean. He was like the perfect person to sell to white people, basically.
And he smacked the man on live television.
Oh, we love it. I mean, it's
Scripted, but
Keep My Wife's Name.
Oh, Jamal.
Yeah. And then, you know, so around that time we had people being soft, but also the main thing that studios wanted though was for people to be a little bit harder. You know, Jay-Z being an example. And when, you know, Jay-Z being an established person, he became the person that younger artists looked up to and wanted to impress. And, you know, having an established display of black masculinity that sells, and then having an icon that people can look up to and want to impress, leads us to people like Kanye. I know a little bit about Kanye. I know that he made a few beats for a while, and then, you know, he showed one to Jay-Z, and then that kind of led him into becoming a producer and then a rapper eventually, and then getting to where he is now. Dalia, do you want to talk a little bit more about how
Started up or restart?
yeah, go yeah,
Startup. Well,
kind of how Kanye formed and how he was so different early on.
Well, so different early on. He started off with the biggest hit that he probably had. Well, the biggest hit that he did have to the beginning was Late Registration. Late Registration was a huge thing. Well, actually, I'd say it's in between Late Registration and The College Dropout, but I'd say that The College Dropout had the most attention surrounding it, since it is one of his albums that made probably one of the most sales at the time. And he started off he was very since he was still a beginner, he was very you know, soft with it, but
Yeah.
eventually he progressed more into the whole theme of you know, school, where he had Late Registration, College Dropout, and then leading up to Graduation. But before that, he was when he was trying to lead up to becoming the big name that he is now, that's when he was showing things to Jay-Z, and Jay-Z was obviously one of the most influential people at the time. So I'd say a duo like that, where he was coming up so quick with so much fame and showing things to Jay-Z, it really impacted them, because that's when Rockefeller Records first began. Kanye wasn't really here for the whole producing thing toward the beginning.
Yeah.
That didn't happen until he literally met Jay-Z. And since Jay-Z was such a good producer that he since Jay-Z was such a good producer, he god damn, I lost my train of thought. you know, he helped him get to the point where they made Rockefeller Records, which was a huge impact on hip hop.
Well, yeah.
And then, there's something I changed.
No, just like, cause I know that when Kanye came in, he was just trying to have anything go his way, right?
Mhm.
He came in, he showed a few beats, and they seemed to really like the ones he was making. But that's all he was. He was a producer for a lot of them. So most of, if not all of the best beats he made were going to other people.
Yeah.
And, you know, Jay-Z was a really good producer at the time. And he, along with producing and becoming a little bit more powerful and being able to make his own record company, he was kind of like, he was like a higher up guy when it came to groups and people a part of the label he was a part of. So he could be like, hey, we need to bring this Kanye guy in. And then he needs to make beats for everyone. So that's kind of what Kanye was doing. So he was initially he wasn't that guy. He wasn't that guy. He was not that guy. He came in, was told to do a job to help other people, and that's what he did for the most part. He came in, he made stuff for other people while not being able to show kind of what he had in him.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I'll say like midway through where things really began to take, I mean, not really more so like a turn, but where his like main fame rose is, everybody already knows it, but Graduation. Come on.
Yeah.
Graduation, that was the hit album. And then obviously that's when a lot of things changed, because even though he was such like a different addition to rap and hip hop, that when he produced 808s and Heartbreaks, that one really took a turn on rap and hip hop, because it was not like your typical, like, how do I say it? Not like vulgar, but like your typical
hard
on like rap. It was like more, he was so in touch with his emotional side, and he wasn't afraid to like show people that it's okay to like really put your emotions into the songs that you produce.
Yeah.
And so that one was, although, and I think because at the time, because of how big of a figure he already knew he was, after mass producing albums like year after year, and then especially after all of the fame he got from Graduation, where he had probably some of the most popular songs on that album, I believe that he knew that what he was doing was already good. So in 808s and Heartbreaks, I feel like he didn't fear like not being able to make it with that new album.
Yes.
Although it was a lot different than what was being produced at the time, I think he just knew that he could be able to do it and make it to where people would really appreciate it the way that they appreciate almost every other album that he had.
Yeah, because I know that his the first like 3 albums before 808s and Heartbreaks were still different, because he was just making the art that he wanted to make. He specifically was not trying to have the persona that every other rapper at the time had, where they were like, oh, I'm hard and I sell drugs and do illegal activity to make money. He wasn't like, I'm not gonna do that if that's not true and authentic to myself. So he was already making the art he wanted to make, and then things happen in his personal life, and then he is in a place where he is feeling his feelings a lot, and that's the album he came out with. So along with already not being a part of the mold and becoming super popular, and then just taking a chance in what he knew was going to be successful regardless of what he did, he made something that didn't go with any of his previous work, was different than what he was already making, which was already different than what was being mass produced at the time and was popular at the time, and was able to just be himself. And I think that's why he was so impactful, because after decades of struggle, I think what Kanye showed is that, hey, we don't need to perform to what people think we need to perform to, so that we can make our rise out of these oppressive structures. So, hey, you guys don't need to be performing for these people who don't care about us and hate us. He went on live TV and said that George Bush hates black people after what was it, like Hurricane Katrina or something like that? Yeah. After Hurricane Katrina, he went on live television with Mike Myers and said that George Bush hates black people. So I think that was his main appeal, is that he was incredibly authentic, which was not popular at the time because authenticity was kind of was a way that you kind of, it was like not a show of weakness, but it meant you were vulnerable, and if you're vulnerable, it means you're vulnerable to attack, which I think we learned was going to happen anyway. So if you could do anything to shield yourself against people coming at you and attacking you, that was kind of what you wanted to do. But that was at the cost of people's authenticity. And I think he really showed that you could still be authentic while being under these structures and not letting certain things bother you. If you like letting yourself be who you are and not letting them oppress everything in your life. Control what you can, fix what you can, right?
Yeah.
Sam?
And I don't know jack about Kanye.
Yeah.
Really?
No, I gotta be honest. I don't know like
Everything that we just
any.
talked about, like, you didn't know any of that?
I mean, I knew like he made the record company and all the albums and whatnot, but I didn't know like. And I did know about the George Bush thing, but I don't know
We all
anything
did.
else to add. That's it.
Yeah.
Anything?
I think just in general, Kanye has always been an extremely influential figure because of how committed to being authentic he's been. Because he's always been, I'm going to make what I want to make, and if people like that, then I'm going to know it. And people are going to like what I make because I like what I make. And I think not all of his previous fans liked 808s and Heartbreaks when it came out, even though it was still good. They didn't like it because it wasn't what he had already been making, but he didn't care. I think that's really important. Now, after 808s and Heartbreaks, I don't know much about how his music evolved and how it evolved with him. So if you wanna.
After 808s and Heartbreaks, that's when a lot happened in his life. Not, I wouldn't say like a lot, but a lot. It was such like major things, like with his breakup, which was, I mean, it wasn't just a breakup, it was more so like what was it, like a call off of an engagement?
Yeah,
And then
I know that.
his mother passed away. The main thing that really influenced the rest of his music career was definitely the passing of his mother, because he really just like, he spiraled off. He's like started producing a lot less albums, like not like a lot, but like a lot less, but it was not within the span of time that he did beforehand, where he was mass producing them each year. This was more so like he was taking time away from the media, or when he would come back to the media, he would do controversial things such as the Taylor Swift and Beyonce.
Yeah, when he went up on stage and said, "Hey, Taylor, I'm going to give you the mic back. Beyonce has made one of the best videos of all time." And there are videos from that night, I think, and pictures and stuff, where he was like drinking all night.
Oh yeah.
And then, which like, I think he was kind of, that wasn't like the first time. The Taylor thing wasn't the first time he did that, but it was definitely a very big time. And most of the times he was doing that, it was after, I think it was towards when his mom, like the era around when his mom died. So it wasn't while he was like coming up that he was doing these things. It was kind of when he was a little bit established, but there was stuff happening that was causing turmoil, and that kind of it made him feel like he could act a little bit erratically just because he was a little bit shaken.
Yeah, he was not, he was not, and he still has not been in the right headspace since then. He's become that's when he became more aware of the mental illnesses that he had following his mom's death, such as like, he is extremely bipolar, in which he touches into that on one of his albums. That's what it's called. Something about I hate being bipolar. It's awesome. Yeah, that album. He produced that album, which he really he got all of his songs, literally every single album after 808s and Heartbreaks is just extremely, very vulnerable. It just really touched into him and the side that nobody really understands of him. I like, with the big loss that he had, his mother was a huge impact on everything. She was like his rock, everything. She was the reason why he came up. And so with him producing like My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, that one, the Bipolar, and then it was just really, it was not a good time for him. I feel like he wasn't ready for anything. I feel like he should have stepped out of the spotlight for a bit and really retouched on whatever was going on in his life, but he did not do so. In fact, he actually got into another relationship with the infamous Kim Kardashian, which did not do him very well. I understand that it was something that obviously was very big at the time. He has several kids with her, but I believe that on top of the death, on top of his mental illnesses, and then being a part of that relationship really caused that man to just spiral out. And on each the thing that a lot of people like now about him is, I guess, just how he was like on press, like not on the press, but like with the press, when they would interview him, he would be completely honest with you about what's going on in his life. That's how we learned about him being extremely bipolar and how it impacts him like so bad. His marriage and whatnot, everything was just very bad for him, but he still kept producing those albums, and yes, the albums were amazing,
but at what cost, right?
Yeah, but at what cost? He put all of his emotions and everything into those songs and albums, which is why they're so impactful for, I guess, kids our age, people our age. But I feel still as if I understand that was maybe a way of coping, or just like being able to express yourself on with some type of what's the word? With some type of like media, and then with some type of medium, with some type of medium. But he just wasn't all there, and I'll say like maybe when did things really start getting bad? Like 2018. After 2018.
I think 2016 was kind of like weird, where he was kind of like letting some things slip, where he was like, hey, I think this guy who's running for president is actually really interesting. Like, I think that's where he was coming from. He's like, he's interesting. And then a couple of years later, he was very much a supporter of some controversial theory.
And although he did have his supporters, it was not very intelligent of him to do so, because it's humiliating. It was humiliating for his family. It was humiliating for him. And then it was very difficult to be like, from the standpoint of a fan, very difficult to support him in such ways. But that's where the downfall really did start, with the whole presidential candidacy, him running, some dumb stuff like that.
Well, Kanye was he grew up, both of his parents were college educated, and then he grows up and he also is educated, and then he becomes successful, and then his mother dies, and he's still trying to hold on. I think the thing is, we had in the Black community a very like a positive like role model, like a positive representer. Almost. We had somebody whose parents were able to become educated and get to a wealthy place. It wasn't like when people's parents are divorced and they're both struggling. No, his parents separated, and they were both successful on their own. And I think that's really a very impactful thing that kind of shaped who he was, because he didn't feel like he had to put on a persona, because he was able to live in a space that was a little bit more healthy in terms of not constantly struggling. And then, so we already have a figure who is able to make the art he wants to make, and is able to show a different side to Black people than what was being portrayed and was popular to portray at the time. And then it shapes over time into something very, very strong, and then it whittles down to where he started to get in 2018, where he was supporting people who ultimately didn't care about the community he was a part of. And fans of his and community people who respected him saying, hey man, you are supporting people who don't support us, and kind of not ostracizing him, but calling him out, and then him taking that as his people like ousting him almost for having a different opinion. And I think that's part of where the mental illness comes in, because he didn't see it as, oh, I'm supporting a controversial figure who's a little bit, who does not care about my community.
He took it as an attack.
Yeah, he took it as an attack of, I have a different opinion than the rest of my community, and they are treating me worse. Yeah.
But I mean, it was like, and then that's where a lot of the mental illness came from. And then with that mental illness, and then he didn't treat it the way that he should have.
Yeah.
He just glossed over it and continued just stacking so much stuff on top of that.
Mm-hmm.
He was so big at the time with all the shoes that he came out with, the merch that he came out with, all of his albums, of course, and just like trying to keep up that reputation, and then with this stupid cannabis use type thing, that was just all on top of each other. And I feel like it was just building up such a horrendous ego that could not be put down.
Mm-hmm.
And so to this day he still has an ego through the roof, but like he just collectively got worse and worse and worse.
Yeah. Because it was almost like he was trying to, it's like that thing you do when you're not feeling well, so you try to make yourself busy, but he is extremely rich and famous, so his way of being busy isn't like picking up an extra shift or like finding as many friends to hang out with and going out all the time. It was getting involved in politics, starting a clothing brand, starting more and more businesses, starting more and more ventures, and then it's already stretching yourself thin as a person who's not doing well in life, mm-hmm. on top of the fact that he's a mega celebrity and nothing with him can be small, right? So it's stretching yourself thin, and then being in the public eye, which is never good for people with mental illnesses, just leading to not the best things. Sam, I know you're pretty involved in it, some sorts of media in general. From your standpoint, how have you viewed Kanye in the last few years? Because he has been in the news a lot, so even people who haven't followed him particularly closely know kind of what he is about and kind of what he has going on.
Well, I mean, it's almost like he's gone from this larger, I guess, social figure to almost like a laughing stock, like a joke, in a similar fashion to how some celebrities will do a project and realize that they have reached a point in their fame, and then they'll just go and do outrageous things and make outrageous takes, and it'll just destroy their career. But I mean, it's easy to say that he is in that position, but I think when you look at the deeper side of, oh, he is severely mentally ill, then it turns more into like a he needs help kind of thing.
Yeah, because there's always celebrities who, were the peak of their time, who just aren't anymore. I feel like Ice Cube is a really good example of that. He was in one of the most popular musical groups of the 80s and 90s, and even into the 2000s they were still pretty popular. And then, he was in a few movies. Are We There Yet? It's a pretty good movie. He was in a few movies that did pretty okay. He was still kind of kicking around. And then I think as we've gotten into such an oversaturated media landscape, so he's just kind of, faded into the background.
Kind of just acting now.
He still has stuff going on, like, trying to give back to communities, maybe in not the best way, like teaching underprivileged communities how to do crypto has been a thing. So he's still kicking around, but he's not in the news all the time. He's not getting, like, people aren't awaiting his albums like they were. But I think Kanye has found a way to, along with his struggles and with people in the media honestly pushing it out of him and wanting those reactions and stuff from him, I feel like that's why he's still around.
Yeah, the media is a huge like fault at why he continues.
Mm.
He loves the attention, huge attention seeker. It goes along with his ego, and they just feed into it. They find it so entertaining, which, I mean, it's like entertaining to see that someone could do such outlandish things.
Yeah.
But it's like, don't do that. Don't.
Yeah.
Don't
Because that's
be that
not
person.
helpful.
Yeah, it's not helpful in the slightest bit. He was going through a divorce. And I know it's been years since his mother did pass away, but like that's not going away. That's the reason why he literally made his album last year for his mother.
Yeah. And that's a thing that I think has happened a lot. You know, the media has a really funny way of leaving out so much of Black voices and Black stories, and then finding this really weird way to highlight some of the more dirty aspects of it. You know, we're seeing Kanye in the news constantly, or, you know, but we're always seeing, you know, his rise and, you know, some of these like really wealthy people, but we're not usually seeing, like, you know, a homeless man was murdered in the subway like a couple weeks ago, and, you know, people have stopped talking about that, even though it was just a mentally ill homeless man who was a talented, like, Michael Jackson impersonator, who some ex-Marine took it upon himself to kill. And we heard about that for like maybe a week. I know people who didn't hear about it at all. But I feel like that those are two cases of mentally ill people. One of them is rich and famous and is being goaded and treated like by some of these right-wing outlets, being used as like a pawn to get their message across in such a way, because, oh, it's Kanye West, he's a Black performer, if he says what we're all saying, then people might co-sign it more. And then, at the same time, a mentally ill person was killed. And I feel like that's like the plight of being a Black person on the media. If you get the gift of the public eye, and they either won't tell stories and will leave aspects of people out, or if they do give you the chance to be in front of the media, they'll wait for it. They'll keep giving it to you, and they'll give it to you, and they'll wait until they have the moment something goes wrong, and then have that be one of the more platform things. It happens. I always feel like it happens a lot. So, like, whenever you see Black people on the news, they either committed a crime or they're being killed by the police. Sometimes it's both. Sometimes it's one or the other. You don't usually see Black people on the news for something good. Like right now, one of the Supreme Court justices, I think the only Black Supreme Court justice right now, is in the news exclusively for the fact that he's been taking bribes and has been, you know, helping disenfranchise his own community. That sucks really bad. That's like the only guy in the news right now that we're seeing, and that really sucks. And then, never mind. You know what? That's the thing. I forgot about the other Black justice. Sam just reminded me, Ketanji Brown Jackson. I forgot about her because I didn't think they let her into the Supreme Court, because when she was appointed to the Supreme Court, there were so many people saying that she wasn't qualified and like questioning her ability to be a Supreme Court justice, like inherently just saying that she probably wasn't going to be good at the job. She was, you know, probably not a good lawyer, to the point where people were saying, like, the people who do allow people to become Supreme Court justices, it seemed like all of them were pretty negative whenever I would watch any of the hearings. So I didn't even realize that she was actually on the Supreme Court because of how negatively the confirmations were going when it came to her becoming a part of the government. Like, fully I forgot.
I mean, when people in government are giving you particularly negative views, it's hard to, I guess, remember, or I guess deem that they would let her in.
Yeah. Like, I got a question wrong on a practice test for government because I thought we only had 8 justices because I thought we didn't have
A 9th yet.
Yeah, the 9th yet. I thought they were still trying to figure that out. And it's because I only ever saw people questioning her and questioning her ability. And, you know, I remember that Brett Kavanaugh became a Supreme Court justice because I watched the hearings in my 8th grade class. I heard the questions they were asking him, I heard the things he was saying, and none of it was good. And I remember he made it onto the Supreme Court because I was entirely baffled and confused at the fact that they, after everything that they heard, they still let him on. And then I didn't know that we got another one because of how much she was being
Negatively received.
Yeah, which both of them were being negatively perceived by the opposite side. One of them for actually solid reasons, the other one because, I don't know, if we let another black justice on there, she might cause change. You know, as we saw on that key events article, they don't like when people try to make change, especially black people. It usually ends in people dying. Anyway, I think seeing so many people, seeing so many black people, and seeing so many just of the worst aspects of a community, it kind of leads you to feeling a little apathetic, because then it's like, well, if I'm only ever seeing prominently negative aspects of something that I'm a part of, then it kind of leads to another layer of apathy. So communities are, throughout the 1900s, communities are burned down, flooded, turned into lakes. Lake Lanier has a town underneath it. Like, there was a black town, and it was actually quite well off, and then it got flooded and turned into a lake. When you have things like that happening, again, I can't get over Bloody Sunday. That is always wild. When we have things like that happening, that leads to a layer of apathy where you're like, well, why do I keep trying? I think I touched on that at the end of last episode. Why keep trying if it's so hard? And then seeing so many people in the media, but it's usually negative portrayals, or in movies, it's usually one specific portrayal, and you don't really get any other viewpoints. That leads to so much apathy over time that when black voices do end up getting to be in the public eye, it's almost a waste to have your time be wasted on like just another run-of-the-mill movie, because there's always going to be movies that are just kind of, all right, that was something I watched. Like, what's the one where Rebel Wilson is like a cheerleader who was in a coma, but so she's still like a teenage cheerleader, but she's like 30? Yeah, that's like a movie you go watch because you're bored one day. But when black people are in the media and have a chance to actually have their voices heard, you get movies like Get Out by Jordan Peele, where we have a comedian not making like a random comedy movie, but saying, no, I'm going to make a movie that is terrifying and touches on aspects of my community and my life that people don't usually see. So we have Jordan Peele, putting out movies like Get Out and Nope and Us are 3 movies that he's made that have been particularly impactful every time, and have been incredibly successful at the same time. But they all show portrayals of black people being negatively affected by something, right?
Mhm.
And then, you know, apathy always leads to, in art specifically, it always leads to some sort of surrealist take. Like during between World War I and World War II, Dadaism became extremely popular because it was like, well, why would I be logical when the people who are supposed to be being logical are starting wars and killing people for no reason? So it's like a turn to absurdism to be, to kind of deal with the pain that you're feeling. You turn to being weird and surreal and just wild and just being wild.
Because the reality you are currently in is less comfortable than the crazy you try to create.
Exactly. So the reality that you're living in is so utterly horrible that you're like, oh, you want to know what I can do instead? I'm just going to make really, really weird art that reflects the way I'm feeling, but in a way that's incredibly weird and not hard to understand, but incredibly, like, out of the box way to understand something. So then we see, you know, wars and things like that end up leading to things like surrealism taking such a prominent hold, and you know, science fiction being another way that people kind of get out of the times we're in by looking to the future in a very, like, in Star Trek's case, a very utopian way, and then in Star Wars' case, a very hero's journey against the terrible empire Vietnam allegory that we have there. So science fiction and surrealism are two really interesting and powerful ways people have tried to get out of or show aspects of the reality that they live in. And that is not untrue for black people. So on our next episode, we're going to be talking about Afrofuturism and Afro-surrealism, two topics that take this apathy and disdain that black people feel every single day and how they turned that into their own versions of these art forms and mediums that arise out of apathy. How the black experience specifically changes these things to make them more Afrocentric, and seeing how different they are from their you know, white counterpart mediums, and how they expunge upon you know, genres we've already seen in a new way that centers black people. Thank you for listening to the second episode of Black Eyes Podcast. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.